Oh, why allows access to my LinkedIn? Oh my god, what? LinkedIn?
No.
This application is disabled?
Oh no.
Click here to reconnect with your LinkedIn. What?
That's
Oh my
exactly what
god.
it said to me.
What the fuck? I'm sorry. What?
That's
This is
okay.
such a nightmare. I'm sorry. What the fuck?
That's
I'm sorry.
fine.
This never happened. I'm like so worried right now. What the
Oh
hell?
no. Let's
We're
just
about
let's just
to.
let's not get really anxious about it and just reschedule.
Oh no no no! I think I'm just reconnecting. Oh, it's connected right now. The
Oh,
event will
good.
start soon. Wait for the host to start. Blah blah. Blah.
Okay, good.
I think we're on. We are.
Oh, great.
We're maybe on. Okay, so perfect. I'm so glad it's like I don't know. It's back or something. Hopefully
Me
it's
too.
back. I don't see
Yeah.
myself, but it's fine. Oh, it is go. It's not going live. Oh,
Oh no.
okay. It's still not. We don't worry. We got you covered. What? This application is disabled. Okay, so did LinkedIn
So
just like cancel on StreamYard or something?
they might. That's what I'm thinking. That's literally what I'm thinking happened. Is that
Oh
like they're like,
my
we don't want
god.
to use this integration anymore. We want you to go live
Let me
within.
just see. Oh, sorry. Let me see if it's on my YouTube. So if it's on my YouTube, we can just keep going live because we're live on the YouTube channel
Okay.
anyway. So
I love YouTube.
okay,
Let's keep it to YouTube.
YouTube. It's on my YouTube. So like I mean I connect to like literally 6 different platforms on my end, so we're good. I think we're good. Yeah, we're still on. Okay, so we're still on YouTube. Okay,
Cool.
great. I guess we'll just I'm just gonna quickly post to the audience if someone who joined us and then they can just like find us on YouTube or something right now. Because
That's
typically there's audience who will be like asking some questions or whatever.
that sounds perfect.
Okay. One person's watching now. Great. Okay, let me just quickly um just tell the LinkedIn audience to join on YouTube.
Cool.
Okay, sorry. This never happens. This is literally the first time I'm like literally having a heart attack because today.
No, take your time. Breathe. It's not a big deal at all.
Thank you so much for being so chill. I'm like, what the hell? What the hell? It's just like a day in my life that's went crazy. Hi, universe. Uh, Lyndon doesn't allow us to connect to StreamYard, so we migrate onto YouTube. Use this link to join. Now we are live. This is so crazy. I feel like people are probably thinking I'm spamming, but I don't care.
You're so funny.
Dude, this is like a major nightmare. Just like a day of being a founder. Okay,
Literally.
so I guess we're on here. Okay, so yeah. How are you, Sydney? Beside like all these drama, we literally use like 15 minutes to like figure out how to use freaking StreamYard. And StreamYard, if you're watching this, please just sponsor this show at this moment. Like, I have onboarded literally hundreds of VC onto this platform. Nobody know how to use this, but anyway, I'm glad like we're still here on YouTube and everything. And okay, so to start the show, like despite all the drama, I would love for people to get to know you because I feel like you are just like a really down to earth and like a really cool person like through our conversation. And why don't we start with like how did you break into venture at like the precursor like age, like how do you break into venture and what were some core lessons that you've learned in your BD job, in your product marketing job, and in your precursor age that like helped you start Symphonic Capital today?
Yeah. Um, Hi, everyone. Nice to meet you. Excited to be here today. I am, you know, always been interested in been actually just very intensely curious. And I would say that's been a guiding post throughout my career. So, how did I break into venture? I actually went to business school at Berkeley, and it was my first time actually exploring what I would want to do in the private sector. Before that, I was in the public sector. My first career was in the public sector, where I worked for Congressman Barbara Lee. I worked for DC Public Schools. I worked for Mayor Bloomberg, and got to see this wide.
Wait, what is it like working for Mayor Bloomberg? I'm so
Yeah,
curious.
that was an interesting one. He is a bit of a character. I was there for the third term, and just got to see just how impactful he was able to be, because he was able to combine his background in finance with the skills that a lot of the folks who worked with him had. And so he's an incredible delegator, and really wanted his staff to step up and own as many projects as they could, which gave, I think, the entire um, mayor's department a lot of opportunity to be really creative and also move really quickly. So we got to do and test out a number of things, which was just really fun, very dynamic.
I wonder, so okay, so since recently you started your own VC fund, why don't we talk about like, I feel like previous to this conversation we've chatted about like fundraising and especially like VC and like the women of color space. I feel like this is like such a different realm. I wonder what would be your like three takeaway that you didn't know about like building your own firm versus like, working at another firm that you feel like, wow, this is like something that I've like completely don't know.
hmm I think that one of the things, and that's such a great question, it's forcing me to reflect a little bit. One of the things that I am constantly learning about is honestly management. I have a team now that similar to, I'd say, like the Bloomberg model, want to empower to do their best work. And it's something that I'm learning how to do for the first time. I have, never been CEO of a company before. And I see very much my work as a VC, not just as leading a firm, but also as a CEO of an organization. And really excited to be leaning on my team for their incredible um, just work product, but that requires me to have a certain level of delegation skills, a certain level of, ability to help them understand what is high priority, what is not high priority, how do we actually like move the needle on what is most important, how do they know what's most important to me on a day-to-day basis. I'd say that's actually like the biggest piece.
I wonder, okay, so I have so many questions there about like both like dedication and as well as like building a fund itself. Like, what would you say as a CEO slash managing partner of a fund? What would you say like your three core job is? Obviously, like for me, when I'm like looking at all these emerging managers, is like, your core job is fundraise. It's sort of like a startup CEO. It's like you have to fundraise, you have to kind of like build the product and sell the product, which is like kind of like attracting the top founders to come to you. And then you have to like, I guess like generate revenue slash like just help these company to grow. And like on the other hand, there's a lot of back office stuff, which is like the operational things. I wonder what would you say, like how do you spend your time and energy on each of these different things? And then what do you think you can delegate? And then what do you think you can't delegate?
Yeah, those are three really important parts of the job. And I'd say it's interesting because I was able to see how a VC firm runs and be a part of it from the inside for so long. There's some of this that just comes really natural to me. Like a lot of the just like tedious things of launching a fund. I like to say a lot of the things about launching a startup is like so administrative. It's like you need to find your legal counsel. You need to actually set up your bank account. You need to do, like, there's just all of these steps that you need to be on top of and you need to be really proactive about in order to actually like make the thing that you need, that you're looking to have exist, actually exist. And that stuff I think is like I know all of those pieces, and so that none of that was quite surprising to me. Um, I think the thing about delegation is it's not always like what you can and can't delegate completely, because I think like there's only so much that I can. There's never a project that I can pass off without any kind of like insight from me at all. But there's a
Mhm.
lot of different moving pieces about every single part of each one of these puzzles that I think is a really interesting, opportunity. Like, I can't delegate an LP meeting. I need to be the one who shows up. But there's so much prep that goes into that LP meeting. There's the pitch deck, there's the, you know, data room, there's the financials, there's the all of these other things that don't get done and are really critical parts to the fundraising journey that I'm able to leverage on my team and broader. Oh, oh, I cut out for a minute. Did you see me?
Yeah, I can see you now. I'm sorry. I don't know why today's like technical difficulty is like
No
very
worries.
strong. It's crazy. Oh my god. Yeah, but I hear you. So basically, like, there's things that like, as a founder, you have to show up, for example, the LP meetings, but there's a lot of things, for example, the deck or like the data room or like something that's like in the preparing stage or like in the background that could be like outsourced or like basically leverage your like team members to like help. um I wonder in terms of like early stage investing, since like you have been in the game for so long that you have been invested in so many different companies. I mean, I hear about this in another podcast you were on about like portfolio construction and general thinking framework. I wonder, since like you are running your fund for a while, like do you still hold the same thoughts about like, I think you mentioned about like more concentrated in the pre-seed stage, that's like your prior or like early on approach of this aspect about like portfolio construction. I wonder if it still hold the same. And I personally feel like in a very early stage to have a really concentrated portfolio could be really tough, as like just a lot goes into if a team could succeed, because I think like beyond amazing founder there's like the market, and like, or there's like, if there's like a giant wave that's coming at this direction, I think just like so many things that could go wrong to a degree. And I wonder how do you think about like, at a very early stage, I guess, how many company do you consider as like a concentrated portfolio, and then how many company do you feel like it's a um less like concentrated portfolio in the very early stage, like pre-seed?
It's such a great question. And I, have been really um, impressed by the level of iteration in the early stage from VCs. I think that there's a number of folks who are just thinking about things differently, which I think is how you generate alpha. It's by
Mhm,
not doing the same thing that everybody else is doing all the time.
mhm,
I think that what has changed significantly over the past couple of years is the definition of what early stage means.
mhm,
For some folks, early stage means Series A. The
mhm,
company has, a million plus in revenue. They're growing pretty significantly month over month. They just raised, maybe 10, 15, 20, $30 million.
mhm,
For other folks, early stage is truly the founder has an idea. They haven't really even quit their job yet, but
mhm,
someone thinks that they have the potential to do something really interesting. And so they get a term sheet and a round done really quickly without really any even truly like proof of concept. Our definition of pre-seed is that that the person who's taking the risk on that founder is
Mm,
entering into a whole nother kind of risk profile that I think is particularly high than somebody who is investing in the pre-seed where we invest in, which is generally companies that are post-product, post-launch, have that first customer identified, and are raising capital to help them grow. So they're not, at a million plus an ARR yet, but they are not at zero, and they have a MVP or they have a company, like they have a company. And
mm,
so I think that what I'm really excited about is that there's a whole category of founders who are those folks who have that company, have been working on this stuff really kind of in the back offices, like, in the under the cobwebs, like in the dark of the night.
mm,
And, because they have been just working on it, haven't gotten a lot of attention from VCs yet. Not but that doesn't mean that the company isn't actually going to be significantly successful or has the potential to grow into something really meaningful.
mm. I wonder when it comes to like um selecting the founders, how do you think about like because since it's at the very early stage, is there like a specific, for example, like sourcing mechanism that you rely on? So besides like, the traditional is like, people getting pitch deck to their inbox or they go approach like, the YC companies or something. So I feel like that's a general approach I've seen a lot of people do. But I guess like I'm sure like each emerging manager have their own sourcing criterias and like where they pull the talents from. I guess like I could think of like maybe three different type of talents, though there is like, a person working at a fast growing startup that is an operator there, and then they're trying to create a company coming out of a famous brand. And then there is maybe like a group of people that's like the students of the world, like they just graduated from like a with a really significant technology degree, and so they're recent grads with a good technology um, understanding, and then they're trying to create something based off that piece of technology. And then there's like the third category of people that they are just serial entrepreneurs, and they may not really like have a specific sector. Maybe they were a crypto company before the AI wave arrived, like, but now they're an AI company and then they're like chasing the next big thing. I guess like when you're looking at these three type of um group of founders, like what's your thought on like quickly filter out what matters to Symphonic Capital versus like what do you think are just like doesn't make sense for you?
hmm We believe that folks who are closest to the problem are closest to the solution. So, a very core part of our underwriting strategy is evaluating how much the founder has personally been impacted by this problem and how long they've been thinking about and working on this problem. That can be tangentially in a completely separate space. That can be, through a startup that they started a few years ago that shut down, sadly. That could be through, just having actually like the lived experience of seeing this happen to their friends and family and community more broadly. The second piece, though, is that we also want to see a real bias towards action. And so this founder has not just seen this problem, but they've also built solutions in this problem before. They've tinkered around this problem before. They've built a company before. They've done, work in leading an ecosystem around this problem before. We want to see how has this founder also taken a real leadership role in fixing this problem in the past, because we think that bias towards action coupled with that lived experience slash proximity to the problem is really what unlocks an amazing opportunity and is the are the two real, I think, critical ingredients to strong founders.
Totally. In terms of like, I guess, since like, we're both like women of color, like when in this realm, like I know that you're a big supporter of like other founders who are coming from like, a similar background. Um, what are some trends that you're seeing in the space of like women of color that like what are they creating? Are they creating the same thing as the people in like the mainstream engineering background, or like how do you think like our ethnicity or our like gender would play impact in like the founder's life, as well as like the ideas they're pursuing, or the yeah, like what are some challenges you feel like um in general we're facing towards like the startup fundraising community?
Yeah. I think that so much of the what gets funded is dictated by what VCs think is interesting, what they know deeply, and what they care about. And I think that when there aren't enough VCs who care about and know about communities of color, we see fewer solutions funded that are looking to serve those same communities. And so I think one of the coolest things about the post-COVID era is that there folks are kind of all over the place. I just got back home in San Diego from a trip to Dallas and then Boston. No, no, no. Dallas, then DC, then Boston, now back. And each one of those places, I met a really interesting startup founder GP LP community.
Hmm.
That's really cool because Dallas looks really different from San Diego. DC looks really different from San Francisco.
Hmm.
And Boston looks really different than all of those. And so to have all of these different perspectives from all these different lived experiences is, I think, that enables us to have a much more um, coherent and complete opportunity to invest in companies that are really going to actually move the needle.
Totally. Can you chat about like maybe call it like three companies that you feel like are really interesting to you right now? Because I know that you have three theme. One of them is healthcare, and why don't we start there? Like, what are some like, and then like the other one's aging, I believe, and then there is the third one is I'm sorry, like I'm just blinking on the third one.
No,
I
you're
took notes
fine.
last time, and I'm like, I think it's my coffee is not strong enough this morning. So also after
And we
this
had a
like
stressful
technical
start.
drama.
We had a
Oh
stressful
god.
start.
Yeah.
So,
Okay. So yeah.
yeah. Well, this is a great time for me to reiterate. So, we are really focused on companies that are closing access gaps around health and wealth for overlooked communities. That
Mhm.
means that we're looking at companies that are in the fintech space, companies in the digital health space, and there's subgenres behind all of those. So,
Mhm.
yes, we would look at companies that are, supporting the elderly because, um, that's an underserved community. We look at companies that are supporting, Latino communities because we think that's a overlooked community. So there's a lot of different pieces underneath each
Mhm.
one of those, but those are really like I'd say like the top pillars that we operate the fund off of.
Mhm.
We're seeing so much cool stuff in the health equity space.
Mhm.
Axios wrote an article recently, actually, that talked about how health equity investments are really taking off. And one of the few areas in startup land that seems to get like an over indexed amount of interest this year compared to years prior.
Mhm.
Oh, I'm really excited to see other folks realizing how big of an opportunity this is too.
Mhm.
Companies that are in our portfolio that I love. I can just talk about one. It's called Canopy. The founder is based in DC, as I just saw her,
Mhm.
and she's building a company that's helping, women who are um, expecting mothers navigate their mental health throughout their pregnancy to decrease the likelihood that they suffer from postpartum depression. This is something that I think when you're in the valley, you're just like, doesn't everyone just have like one of the 10,000 mindfulness apps on their phone? You get out of the valley and you realize actually that was a very specifically those are very specifically targeted to um, the very tech forward communities that are in the valley, but there's actually this whole swath of people, the majority of people who have no connection to mental health support yet. And so
Mhm.
it's really realizing just how much of a opportunity there is when you go to these different places and start talking to people and realizing just how biased your perspective of what everyone's lived experience might look like because you have a very specific experience in a very specific place.
I wonder, so like I completely agree with you. To give the audience a little bit of statistics, I believe there's like 20% people go through postpartum depression. I mean, I recently had my kid. I didn't have, knock on wood, I didn't have the depression, but like I do know people who have suffered from it. And I feel like there should be a solution. Like I even like going through the entire pregnancy journey, like I feel like I've noticed like there's like 400 ideas that I had about this entire
Oh, cool. Tell me. I want to hear
which I'm
all of
like,
them.
wow, oh my God. Like seriously, there's so many like challenges as a woman that like you have to go through um in your entire pregnancy. Some of the ideas are like, for example, like I feel like just like diabetes prevention, like, women of color is like twice as much to get like pregnancy diabetes. What is the term? I'm sorry. Like there's a term for it.
Yeah.
So
Hmm.
yeah, so like during pregnancy, like the women of color are like twice as much as like likely to get like the diabetes during pregnancy, and you have to like really just like using like a needle to like pop like on your finger to like test if your blood sugar was like rushed or something, and those are like just so many like crazy things. I'm just like we're in 2024, we're still using a needle to like really just like test our blood sugar. That's just insane to me. And every single day you have to test like every meal. Like how
Oh
painful
my
is that?
God, that is so painful.
I feel like that itself should just like, I don't know, like there should be a solution for it. And then there's just like so many other things. I'm sorry, I don't want to like so sidetrack on like
No, I
onto my
love it.
idea
This
of
is supposed
like,
to be a conversation. I would love to hear
yeah.
your thoughts.
And then
Mhm.
also there's like so many groups that like moms like, I mean, I don't even know how many like WeChat group that like I've joined, or like just like WhatsApp group that like just like reason moms. Everybody have like so many like questions, and then like the journey is super long. And then also getting pregnant during like the end of pandemic is also like really
Mm.
chaotic. It's like everyone's out there, and then you're like sitting at home because you don't want to expose to like any kind of sort of disease, so your kid is like surviving and stuff. So also like I feel like just like so many things that you could invest in the pregnancy realm, as like there's like 40% people in the world are, at least 40% people in the world are women. And then there's like most, not most women, but like a lot of women go through pregnancy whatsoever. And then it's just like so many things that you kind of like have to go through in this entire journey. I feel like everything could be like solved by like technology or a company that address that issue. I guess like I think like one of the things that you mentioned about the your portfolio company is they're solving this problem. I assume that, as you mentioned, like you're looking for founders who have deep empathy about a particular problem, and then they're like the leader in the space to they play like a leadership role in the past to solve a particular problem. Can you address, like, for example, like, in the end of the day, like venture capital should like beside like beyond the social like realm, like you have to technically make money. And how do you like when you're doing diligence on these kind of ideas, what are your diligence process? Would it be like talking to that person's customer, and then in the pre-seed stage maybe they don't have a customer, and then I feel like every day as like an angel investor I talk to some of the founders, they don't have a client, and then they maybe like are chatting with some like bigger um company as their client. How do you test if something would work on like a company or like financial aspect of things?
Yeah. That's a great question. We are, so like I said before, we generally aren't investing in companies that are pre-launch. And so usually the best way to test if the financials are real is to ask for the founders,
Mhm.
financials. And I think that's one of the things that we ask for in our early stage investment and diligence because to us, that also shows a certain level of rigor with the
Mhm,
founder and actually treating this company like a company and not like
mhm,
a, pet side project or pet
mhm,
project or we want you to know where the money is going, how much money you're making, if you're making any money, and how are you investing it, and how do you expect that to grow. So we look
mhm,
more at past financials than projections because while we do look at projections, but we know that so much of that is taken with huge tubs of salt, not
mhm,
even a grain of
mhm,
salt, because it's all based off of this reality that you hope could exist,
mhm.
but not exactly what has happened yet.
I wonder, when it comes to like, figuring out like what to back, what not to back, because, I feel like I've seen so many interesting ideas in like different spaces, but like, as investors, like we can't really be an expert in each subject. And also like, maybe some things just don't pique our interest. Like, I guess, how do you filter out like, or like maybe you're just interested in so many things. Like, how do you filter out, um, you know, what category or idea that's like just never gonna work or like you won't really back? I guess like
Yeah,
saying no to things is like more harder than saying yes to things to a degree.
definitely. Saying no is so hard, and it's also such a big part of my job. I am never so confident to say that when I say no, that the company is not a good company. I end most of my emails and my past emails where I say no, like saying like we know as a VC that we're wrong a lot. And
Mhm,
so I fully intend for you to completely to be successful as you define that success. It's just I won't be along that journey with you.
mhm,
So I'd say just we have a lot of humility in how we work and operate. And so the way that we focus though are is on companies that are really in this health or wealth thesis. So
mhm,
that's a huge part of how we our past is that like you're just not in scope at all. You're building this company that is trying to take us to Mars, and I don't know how that helps. That's not solving a health and wealth thesis that I know of. Maybe you have a thesis around this, but it's not clear to me. So that's a big reason why we pass. And then I'd say another big reason why we pass is we just think that the company is doing something that is maybe they could fall into the health and wealth thesis, but they're just a little too tangential
mhm,
to it to actually make sense for us. So much of how we define our own success is by the fact that we are really smart about those two verticals. We do not want to pretend to be extremely smart about all of the verticals. And we'll leave that up to, whoever else wants to do that work. But I think that there's just so much opportunity available in early stage. Like we're seeing hundreds of companies a month that if we had a broader scope, we just could not, I think, sufficiently diligence each one of those companies in order to make the best
mhm.
decisions.
Are you one of the fund managers who would like write down all your thesis? Like, okay, so here's like our research on the health and wellness, and as well as like the financial wellness ecosystem, and then here is like how the ecosystem is playing now. Like, I guess like, are you a more thematic person, or are you more of like, we'll just see whatever like in the space, and then we'll like kind of shape our thinking based off like the founder's vision? And in terms of like, how do you filter out like higher quality founders in those space? Because there's just so many people are innovating in the space. I feel like there's like 80% times like quickly filtering out like the 80% things that like may not be um like worth pursuing as a fund manager. Like I guess like how do you what are some like call it like three things that you like 3 questions that you ask the founder to quickly filter out this is just like never gonna work?
Hmm. So,
Sorry, let me repeat my question. I know you're like
yeah.
probably lost. So the first question is like, how do you study a sector? And then
Hmm.
the second one is like, how do you like what do you like 3 questions you ask the founder to quickly filter out like a bunch of people?
Hmm. So, luckily, both me and my business partner, Shrutisha, are serious nerds. We are
Mhm,
the first to admit this. And so, the way that we study a sector is by just reading a lot. So,
mhm,
we are constantly digesting information about what is happening in the world. One of our favorite publications is 19th News, which is a
mhm,
nonprofit newsroom that does a lot of investigative journalism into what actually is happening across different parts of the United States.
mhm,
We use a lot of that to inform our insights on, like, oh, okay, interesting. This is actually like tech thought that this was solved, but we're learning that this investigative journalism in, Texas realized that this actually is not solved at all. And so maybe there's more of an opportunity for us to go deep on that space there than we
mhm,
initially thought. So a lot of our work is actually trying to balance, I think, the information that we get from the tech VC land, which is also, very important for us to know, just to know the competitive landscape there, but balancing it against real investigative journalism of real people that we're able to get from separate news sources.
mm. So you mentioned like 19th news. So I guess like what pattern are you looking for to like do you take notes and like what does your notes look like? Is for example they mention like what also like what are some giant trends that you're seeing in general in the space that you care about?
Hmm. My notes look like really long. I do handwritten notes, and so my notes are usually like either handwritten in like cursive that nobody can really understand, or it's a voice note to my team around like, oh my gosh, I just saw this thing and we need to like spend some more time here, or it's a running list in our Slack channel of just like me sending out article after article after article. Like, oh wow, this is cool, this is cool, this is cool. We need to like think about this. I would like you guys to spend some time here. I need
Mhm,
more information about this. So it looks, I have a lot of different ways to process
mhm,
information. And it's one of my favorite things to do is to just like think and iterate and learn. One of the spaces that we're really excited about, particularly right now, is um, I mentioned that mental health space for moms, but I also think, to take that a step further, we're seeing a huge mental health um, problem with rural communities, with the younger generation, with folks who are um, a little more disenfranchised from, I think, or just ostracized, frankly, from major metro areas that I think has a significant negative impact on our world. I think when people are mentally unwell, they do things that are not in their best interest and not in their community's best interest. And if we don't take care of those folks, um, it can impact us all. And so I think a lot about how are we investing in companies that are not just closing access gaps for that specific community, but also what is the ripple effect when that community feels taken care of, that we're actually able to improve our country more broadly.
I wonder, so from like a financial perspective, how do you kind of like show this effect in data format and like how do you evaluate I guess like in the ecosystem, can you share a little bit more about like how the money flow? So for example, let's say investing in like a mental health app or a mental health company, how like I guess like is the insurance paying for it and like how the I guess like how the ecosystem kind of work from a financial level?
Mm-hmm. I mean, that's a huge part of it is that when you get really specific about spaces, so we're really specific about fintech and we're really specific about digital health, we're able to understand the business models that operate within each one of those systems really effectively. So we're able to get just quick, we know what to look for
Mhm,
much more quickly in order to understand whether or not these are viable business models, whether or not they're actually they have this projection that they're going to close this
mhm,
contract next week, but we know actually from previous experience that it's going to take 3, 4 months for them to close that contract. Like we
mhm,
just have a lot more insight into
mhm.
how these companies can be effective when we're really focused on specific spaces.
I wonder, so in terms of like, for example, someone trying to sell something in the healthcare ecosystem or like in the healthcare, like I feel like both of these subsectors are very to a degree. I think there's a lot of like different like barriers. So for example, what I guess like how do you really get picked up by, let's call it like an insurance ecosystem for as a healthcare company, and what type of like founder background do they have to have? Like for example, do they have to come with like industry relationships in the um healthcare space to understand the um like I guess like how like insurance or like healthcare ecosystem, or like how I guess how does it work generally, and who will need to buy in? Is that like, are they selling to the doctors, or are they selling it to just like a like a major tech companies like healthcare network slash like I guess like human resources, or like how does a sales motion kind of like takes for like an early stage company to build the distribution themselves?
There's so many ways to do it. So many ways to do it. So we've seen everything from a company is selling to a startup who already has those relationships with healthcare contracts. And so that startup is able to give to pay this other startup through this
Mhm.
healthcare contract. We've talked to founders who are selling into healthcare contracts themselves, hospital systems
Mhm.
themselves, large payers like Medicaid. We've
Mhm.
seen a lot of iteration on this
Mhm.
work, which I think is pretty cool that there's so many different ways to actually finance this um, great work because there's so much, and this is where we come from. Just our ethos as well is that there's actually just like so much untapped wealth in this country hidden in different pockets that if we just get really smart about where are those pockets and how do we actually increase an ability for those pockets to get um, access to the communities that they really need to serve or they're
Mhm.
looking to serve, then we can actually unlock a really interesting distribution system and channel that didn't previously exist. So we operate very much from that abundance mentality, and I think we have the data to back it up. This country is the richest country in the world. There is so much money that we
Mhm.
don't need to be focusing on, like, can this make money? It's how is it making money? How is it leveraging the money that's already available? How are they building these really interesting partnerships and
Mhm.
programs and um, you know, resource hubs to enable the opportunity for them to tap into the
Mhm.
wealth of this
Mhm.
country. But it's a really great question and one we think about a lot.
I feel like one thing I really admire about you is like I feel like you really think so differently, and then you are just like one thing I wanted to ask you last time was like I feel like you are just so confident at like solving a lot of these problems, and I feel like you on this like other podcast you mentioned about like your mother was like a major inspiration. She's like a really cool like hustler basically, and then I wonder like how like I guess like because you really like not like bootstrap, but like you kind of like figure out like a way for yourself to like find your own place in the venture ecosystem. And I wonder, number one is like how does a mental journey kind of like look like for you to like build your own fund? Because I just heard like so many things about like how hard fundraising is. I'm sure like people are telling me like, oh, rejection or something, but like I guess that's like a part of sales job. Like any salesperson could probably resonate, but I wonder how do you kind of like pull it through, and then how do you kind of like create this framework of like fundraising journey for yourself? Like how do you kind of like figure it out?
Yeah, I mean, I think the first thing to do is get very clear about what success looks like for you. I think
Mm,
that when you are exposed to so many different opinions and strategies and um, people, it's really useful to a certain extent to gather all of that information. And then you need to just like say, okay, that's enough. I've learned enough. And
mhm,
now I need to actually figure out how I want to execute on all of that information that I've learned. That usually, for me, requires a certain amount of separation in order and time in order to both digest, learn, iterate, expand. And I think that sometimes we don't give ourselves that time to actually get to the how am I actually going to integrate that learning instead of how am I just going to copy basically what looks like it was successful.
mm, mm. Um, I guess I think you mentioned a really good point is like collecting a bunch of information and then you have to digest it yourself. Maybe like sit separately from like a lot of different people. I guess like what does that journey kind of look like for you to like like because from like so like just me picturing how this thing works is like a lot of people like would probably have to execute on top of like a lot of different strategies or ideas, and it is kind of like I think starting any type of company is a lot of it is like the differentiation is based off like your execution, and also people are so different coming from different background, and like it's really hard to figure out like what to do. And that I guess like if there is a kind of like mechanism that you set for yourself, for example, your goal is like to raise X amount of money for your fund. And number one is like how do you kind of convince yourself you're not delusional? And I mean, like, when everyone so I think for, like, women of color, especially, like, I feel like a lot of times, like, we are in a lot of, like, imposter syndrome that, like, "Is this even doable?" Like, "Nobody has done this before." Like, how is this even happening? So I guess, like, a lot of it are, like, your mental, personal battles.
Mhm.
And, so another part is, like, how do you I guess, like, what's your kind of, like, framework on thinking like number one, believing in yourself, and then number two, like I went on someone else podcast and they asked me like, how do you like kind of if you're starting a company at the beginning, you don't make money, how do you kind of like sustain yourself, that kind of thing. So I wonder what was your thought framework when you first like prior to starting your fund successfully. There must be a period of time that you would be fundraising or like doing these other things. Like how do you go through this like entire mental battle as well as like maybe since we talk about like the financial wellness, like how do you kind of like juggle that like both you have to have some sort of like income to like support yourself as well as like you don't know how long this journey is gonna last in terms of fundraise, like how do you kind of like juggle all these different things?
Oh, those are such good questions and such, you know, specific questions that are very unique to every single person. And I think that one of the things that when you're caught up in that survival mode, like go, go, go mode, like must do all the things mode, you don't actually give yourself time to take stock of all of the things that you already have, like all of the resources that you already have. You keep focusing on like, okay, but I need that, and then I need that, and then I need that, and then I need that. And I'm like, okay, whoa, whoa, whoa. What do you actually have already? Like, let's sit with that. Where can you get creative with what you already have? How do you be really thoughtful about the ecosystem that you've already built, the people who already really trust you, the organizations that already have, you know, said they love working with you? Like, what is your kind of like zone of, like, just taking stock of all of those things? I think is so critical before you make a big decision like starting a company because you might surprise yourself. You actually might have more than you thought you needed to get started, but you've been told by other people that you need more and more and more and more and more in order to be successful. And so that's why I keep coming back to this, like, you need to start with yourself. What is that for you? And when you've become really critically aligned with that vision that you have for yourself, then you move. But before you're there, just stay, just learn, just soak it up. If there's nothing wrong with learning. And so, it took me my whole life to launch this fund. And so I think that each one of those parts of my journey was critically important in order for me to get here.
Mm. I wanna talk a little bit more about, like, I guess, like, learning about how the venture ecosystem work. So you've also besides, like, Precursor, you also as a part of, like, the Berkeley, the House Fund. And, what are, like, some at these, like, different organizations, like, what are some, like, strategy that you feel like are working as an investor that you brought to starting your own venture? And then what are something that you feel like, "Okay, so this is, like, what, in the past, like, did not work for everybody else," that you kind of like trying to avoid?
These are great questions. I also though have a 10 o'clock. I don't know how to say this like off the record.
Oh, yeah. Oh, I'm sorry. Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah.
I
Oh,
wonder if like these are I can follow up with a part two, or
okay.
like a answer to this written because those are also really great questions. Um, Thank you so much. This has been so lovely.
Totally. Oh my god, I'm sorry that, like, we went through this whole technical difficulty journey together earlier today, but thank you so much, Sydney. I'll let you go to your 10 o'clock, and then we'll chat later. Thank
Cool.
you.
Sounds good. Bye.